Hello and welcome to our course on visual thinking. In this incredibly fast-paced world where we're constantly swimming in information, being able to organize and communicate big, complicated ideas is more important than ever. I think visual thinking gives us a really intuitive and structured way to handle this challenge. So for this lesson, we're going to dive into what it is, how our brains use it, and some practical ways you can start applying it. What is visual thinking? Essentially, visual thinking is the process of using visual elements to explore ideas, solve problems, and communicate information. It's about using things like diagrams, mind maps, and simple flowcharts to organize your thoughts in a way you can see and interpret. It leverages the power of visuals to grab attention, help people understand, and make things stick. It's a powerful tool to simplify complexity and crystallize your ideas and strategies so they're easy to grasp and remember. This process is really about making your ideas visible in their most digestible form. This goes way beyond simple drawing and includes all sorts of visual language, from icons and different fonts to even just using directional arrows to enhance the clarity of your message. How your brain thinks visually. It's pretty clear that human cognition is deeply connected to vision. Right from the time we're infants, we're interpreting the world through patterns, light, and movement. Cognitive science shows that visual input plays a huge role in memory, learning, and getting people's attention, while language is definitely a cornerstone of human thought. Research seems to suggest that we often think in a blend of visual and verbal forms. People sometimes confuse visual thinking with just plain vision, but it's actually less about how we see and more about how our brains process information and perceive the world. Some studies even appear to show that people with strong visual thinking skills process details and patterns more quickly, which really points to an innate efficiency in handling visual data. So, a key concept here is the picture superiority effect, which is just a fancy way of saying we tend to remember pictures better than words. There's a lot of solid research to back this up, and it helps explain why a simple diagram or visual note often sticks with us much longer than a block of text. It's like those visuals become anchors for our memory. There's also something called dual coding theory. This framework suggests that our brains store verbal and visual information in two separate systems. Using both seems to enhance our ability to retain and retrieve information. Neuroscientific studies, including some using sophisticated technology like magnetoencephalography, have even shown that when people who are visual thinkers are asked to recall something, they actively create images, while verbal thinkers rely more on internal self-talk. This really drives home the idea that there are distinct neurological pathways for different cognitive styles. You might be surprised to learn how fast the brain can recognize images. For instance, a study at MIT showed that humans can identify images in as little as 13 milliseconds. This rapid processing helps us get the gist of visual information much faster than we could by reading a big chunk of text. Psychologists have also identified different visual cognitive styles. Some of us are object visualizers. We think in detailed, almost photographic mental images. We see the world in vivid mental pictures. Others are spatial visualizers who understand the relationships between objects like shapes or movement. These people tend to think in patterns and abstractions and often excel at conceptualizing complex systems. Both styles are incredibly valuable and, in a way, offer hidden gifts in how we process the world. Think about putting together IKEA furniture. Do you try to read all the written instructions, or do you just gravitate toward the pictures? Most of us naturally prefer the visuals. That simple example reflects a broader truth. Visuals clarify sequential steps and help us understand processes more intuitively. So, what makes visual thinking so powerful? It seems to come down to four main principles. Clarity. Visuals simplify complexity by focusing on the most important elements, which reduces cognitive overload and makes information easier to digest. Structure. Tools like mind maps or flowcharts help you organize information logically. This can reveal connections and hierarchies that might otherwise get lost in linear text. Engagement. Visuals naturally grab our attention and invite participation, making learning and communication a lot more dynamic and memorable. Flexibility. Visual thinking is super adaptable across pretty much any field and learning style. You can seamlessly integrate text, images, and symbols to suit your specific needs. Again, I want to emphasize that visual thinking is not about creating art. It's about making ideas visible. Even simple sketches with arrows and boxes can reveal connections that might stay hidden if you just stick to text. In a team setting, visual thinking is amazing for collaboration. Think about using a shared diagram or a whiteboard to align everyone's understanding, clarify goals, and build on each other's ideas. Research on group cognition has shown that externalizing thoughts visually helps teams solve problems more effectively and boosts innovation. Today, with more and more businesses trying to be agile, visual thinking is becoming crucial for breaking down silos between departments and getting people more engaged. Unfortunately, our traditional education systems often prioritize verbal and linear skills. While reading and writing are obviously essential, students who are more visual thinkers may not always have the space to develop their strengths. It's a shame when visual thinkers are screened out by curricula that favor linear thinkers who are good at test taking. I think this points to a missed opportunity to nurture a huge range of different talents. For instance, studies show that things like field trips and hands-on learning can really boost student engagement and critical thinking. Visual aids can also make abstract topics, especially in science and math, more accessible. I remember struggling with algebra but excelling at geometry because it was so visual. It just makes sense that visual supports in math instruction could help bridge some of those understanding gaps. You might have heard of Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. While there's some debate about the neurological evidence, the core idea is still so valuable. People learn in different ways. Honoring these differences helps create more inclusive environments where everyone can thrive. Ultimately, visual thinking is a skill you can learn and apply. Whether you're mapping out a strategy for work, explaining a concept to your friends, or just collaborating on a personal project, using visuals will help you think more clearly and communicate more effectively. It's a pretty powerful ability to have. Welcome back. In today's world, everything seems to be getting more complex, so being able to think visually is really more than just a helpful skill. It's an entire approach that can make a huge difference in how we understand things, get creative, and communicate with others, both at work and in our personal lives. But why is it so powerful? Let's take a look. Visual thinking is essentially about using things like images, diagrams, sketches, or even just the layout of a page to organize and share information. It turns out that our brains are incredibly good at this. If you've ever wondered why, it might have to do with the fact that our brains have over 30 different areas just for processing what we see. This extensive neural network really suggests we're built for visual communication. It's an ingrained part of who we are. Our brains don't just see things, they quickly interpret, categorize, and find meaning in complex visual cues. Our brains seem to be evolutionarily wired to process visual information quickly and efficiently. This ability supports everything from how we pay attention and remember things to how we learn and make decisions. Visual thinking leverages these natural strengths by taking abstract thoughts and making them concrete, turning them into visuals that are easier to work with and share. By doing this, we create a kind of external brain or memory aid. It lightens our cognitive load and makes complex ideas more tangible. When you can see an idea, it's easier to refine it and get other people on board, which ultimately helps turn individual insights into shared knowledge. It's interesting to note that not everyone processes information visually in the same way. Researchers have found that some of us are what you might call object visualizers. We tend to recall images with incredible detail. We might be able to picture a specific shade of blue or the exact shape of a car's headlight. Other people are spatial visualizers who are better at understanding how things relate to each other in a larger system, like how a factory's different machines interact to create a product. Both of these styles have their own unique strengths. An object visualizer might be a brilliant product designer, picturing every aesthetic detail perfectly, while a spatial visualizer might excel at optimizing a factory floor, understanding the complex flow of machinery. These different but complementary ways of seeing the world underscore how rich and varied visual intelligence truly is. In professional settings, visual tools, think diagrams, flowcharts, or infographics are being used more and more to make communication and collaboration clearer. Visualization can simplify a complex process, help a team get on the same page, and even support strategic thinking. It appears to be becoming a must-have in today's business environment, where companies are looking for ways to be more agile, break down silos between departments, and better engage both employees and customers. Visuals seem to empower teams to build on each other's ideas, which really helps foster a culture of innovation. Let's dig into this a bit more and look at the profound impact visual thinking can have in a few key areas. One of the most significant benefits of thinking visually is how it helps us solve problems and think critically. Visual tools are great for breaking down a complex problem into smaller, more manageable pieces, kind of like taking a machine apart to see how all the individual parts work. By drawing things out, we reduce our cognitive burden, which frees up our mental resources and makes the relationships between different parts of a problem more obvious. This allows us to see both the forest and the trees at the same time, which is essential for solving problems effectively. Studies in cognitive psychology and education have consistently shown that visual representations can be a game changer for problem solving, especially in tricky fields like mathematics, science, and engineering. They help us spot patterns, test out different scenarios, and find solutions more efficiently. For instance, a statistical problem that seems impossible in a spreadsheet might suddenly make sense when you plot the data on a graph and see a clear trend or an unusual outlier. Similarly, in a lab setting, a complex experiment becomes much easier to follow with a flowchart, and a diagram can clarify how different molecules interact. It's likely that visual thinkers are especially good at spotting patterns or assumptions that a verbal-only analysis might miss. The well-known author and animal scientist Temple Grandin, for example, has talked about how her visual spatial skills helped her see design flaws in animal facilities that weren't obvious to others. She could mentally put herself in the animal's position, which led to more humane and efficient practices. This ability to see things that others can't might also help prevent major disasters. For instance, the detailed visual planning for a new bridge, which might incorporate feedback from embedded sensors and submersible drones, is often driven by visual thinking. It helps planners spot potential risks before they ever become a reality. Thinking visually also seems to aid critical thinking by helping us challenge our assumptions and consider other viewpoints. Tools like decision trees make us visualize possible outcomes, and Ishikawa or fishbone diagrams help us trace a problem back to its root cause, which encourages a more systematic analysis. When we sketch out our thoughts in a mind map, for instance, we might reveal new connections between ideas that we hadn't seen before. The very act of drawing our thoughts is like creating a prototype of an idea, which allows us to quickly spot inconsistencies or gaps in our reasoning that might stay hidden if we just thought about them abstractly. Thinking visually is also a powerful way to communicate. When we turn complicated information into a visual format, it becomes much easier for a wider audience to understand, no matter their background, language, or learning style. There's a reason people say a picture is worth 1,000 words. This is particularly useful in global or multilingual teams, where a Gantt chart showing a project timeline can be understood instantly by everyone, regardless of what language they speak. Our brains are just incredibly fast at processing visuals. Research shows we can recognize an image in as little as 13 milliseconds, which is much faster than we can read and process text. This speed gives visuals a big advantage in a world where we're constantly bombarded with information. Being able to get your message across quickly is a huge competitive edge. Visual communication appears to be particularly good at reducing ambiguity and keeping people engaged. While the idea of visual learners is a bit debated, studies consistently find that using both visuals and words together improves comprehension and retention for most people. This dual approach leverages our brain's natural ability to process information both visually and verbally, which seems to create a stronger and more resilient memory. Visuals can also add an emotional layer to a message, turning what might be dry facts into a compelling story. I've seen this firsthand in a business meeting where a leader used a simple, powerful visual metaphor to explain a complex strategy, and it immediately resonated with the entire team. In professional settings, visuals also help everyone get on the same page by giving them a shared point of reference. Imagine trying to explain a complex sales funnel to a diverse team using only words versus presenting it as a clear, color-coded diagram. The diagram instantly creates a shared mental model which cuts down on misunderstandings and helps teams make decisions faster. When words fail, a quick sketch can often bridge the gap and help a team move forward. This is especially true for leaders who need to simplify complexity and ensure their vision is not only understood but also embraced by the entire organization. Visual thinking is also central to being creative and innovative. When we visualize ideas, it encourages divergent thinking, the ability to explore many different possibilities and come up with new solutions. Sketching, mind mapping, and visual brainstorming allow individuals and teams to quickly generate, evaluate, and refine concepts without getting stuck in a linear thought process. Just the simple act of drawing an idea can spark new connections and insights that might never surface during a purely verbal conversation. Organizations like IDEO, famous for their human-centered design approach, use visual techniques all the time in their design thinking process. For example, they might use rough sketches or simple mock-ups to quickly communicate ideas, get feedback from others, and iterate on designs before they commit a lot of time and money to a specific idea. This fail-fast approach, which is really enabled by visual prototyping, significantly speeds up the innovation cycle. The ability to envision a better future and then design it is what leveraging visual thinking for innovation is all about. Visual thinking also seems to promote a culture of experimentation and play, which is absolutely vital for innovation. When ideas are represented visually, they feel less fixed and more open to change. Teams can literally draw on each other's ideas, adding, subtracting, and transforming concepts in a fluid, dynamic way. This kind of collaborative visual exploration can lead to breakthroughs that purely verbal discussions often miss. It gives people the power to turn their invisible thoughts into a visible reality, which can make the seemingly impossible feel achievable. This ability to make the invisible visible is, at its heart, what visionary leadership looks like. In the future of work, being visually literate will likely be a competitive advantage, as it will allow us to be more effective problem solvers and communicators in an increasingly visual world. Visual thinking can have a major impact on how well we remember things. We already mentioned picture superiority effect, which is the widely accepted finding that images are just easier to remember than words. This seems to be deeply embedded in our brains, where visual information gets encoded in a more direct and lasting way. This is why visuals in textbooks, infographics, and presentations aren't just for decoration. They are fundamentally designed to enhance understanding and make complex material stick. For example, a biology lesson is much easier to understand and remember when it's accompanied by detailed diagrams instead of just dense text. In a professional setting, using visual models or metaphors can make sure that important information stays with your team members, making it easier for them to recall and apply it later on. From helping us solve problems and communicate more effectively to sparking innovation and boosting our memory, visual thinking is a powerful and scientifically backed approach for navigating a complex world. By tapping into our visual abilities, we can improve the way we think, learn, and collaborate. Welcome back. Let's dive into the fascinating world of visual thinking. In past conversations, we established that it's much more than just drawing. It's a core way of thinking that helps us understand, get creative, and communicate better. Today, we're going to explore its surprisingly long history and why images can truly be a universal language that goes beyond what we say or where we come from. By getting a handle on where it all started and how powerful it is, we can hopefully use this amazing human skill more effectively in our own lives. In a lot of ways, the history of visual thinking is the history of human communication itself. Long before we had written words, our ancestors were figuring out how to make their thoughts visible. This deep-seated human trait suggests that visual communication isn't some new fad, but a fundamental part of who we are. Our journey starts in prehistoric times, in the caves of places like Lascaux and Chauvet. There, in the dim light, are some of the earliest examples of human creativity. Dating back tens of thousands of years, these ancient cave paintings aren't just pretty art. They appear to be sophisticated visual stories that show off hunts and rituals, and the animal world, maybe acting as both records and teaching tools. We can see a clear, innate human need to put observations and experiences into pictures, to share knowledge, and to organize complex ideas about their environment. This was, in essence, the very first form of visual thinking on record, proving its foundational role in human communication and its power to pass on vital information across vast stretches of time. Fast forward through history, and we see ancient civilizations continuing to build on these visual systems. The Egyptians, for example, used hieroglyphs, a beautiful and complex writing system that blended pictures with phonetic elements. While they represented sounds, their pictorial nature often directly showed meaning, illustrating concepts with images of objects or ideas. This made them a powerful tool for religious, administrative, and historical records. Early maps, from Babylonian clay tablets to Polynesian stick charts, represent another crucial step. These weren't just drawings of places, they were intricate visual tools for navigation, planning, and understanding spatial relationships. They distilled huge amounts of information into easy-to-grasp pictures, something vital for trade, exploration, and even war. During the medieval period, visual thinking really took off with illuminated manuscripts. These intricate illustrations and decorative elements didn't just make the texts pretty, they clarified complex religious stories, historical events, and even early scientific ideas for a population that was mostly unable to read. These visual aids made abstract concepts feel more real and easier to access. The Bayeux Tapestry, a sprawling embroidered cloth from the 11th century, is another perfect example. It provides a vivid, continuous visual chronicle of the Norman conquest of England. Think of it as a medieval comic strip detailing war and politics. This kind of visual storytelling was paramount in a time when mass literacy was uncommon. The Renaissance marked a huge shift with a new focus on observation, careful study, and the immense power of visual representation. Pioneers like Leonardo da Vinci were the ultimate visual thinkers. His notebooks are legendary, packed with thousands of intricate sketches and diagrams that seamlessly brought together art, science, and engineering. He used visuals to explore anatomy, mechanics, fluid dynamics, and city planning, showing that drawing was more than just an artistic pursuit, it was a powerful tool for scientific inquiry and problem solving. His detailed anatomical drawings, for instance, revolutionized medical understanding by showing the human body with incredible accuracy. Similarly, Galileo Galilei's detailed drawings of the moon and planets, made possible by his improved telescope, changed astronomy forever. His visual records challenged what people thought they knew by making his observations undeniably visible to everyone. The arrival of the printing press during this era dramatically sped up the spread of visual information, making scientific illustrations and maps available to a much wider audience and fostering an explosion of intellectual exchange. The 17th to 19th centuries saw data visualization come into its own. William Playfair, often called the father of statistical graphics, invented groundbreaking charts like the line graph, bar chart, and pie chart in the late 18th century. His work transformed cold, numerical data into visual patterns that were easy to understand, making complex economic trends immediately clear and helping people make better decisions. The Industrial Revolution further pushed the need for precise technical drawings, blueprints, and engineering schematics to design everything from new machines to infrastructure. One monumental achievement from this time is Charles Minard's 1869 map of Napoleon's disastrous Russian campaign. This single, elegant visual masterpiece blends multiple variables, like troop size, location, and temperature, to tell a compelling and tragic story of loss. It's a powerful example of how visual data storytelling can convey complex narratives with deep emotional impact. As we moved into the 20th century, the scientific study of how we see and think deepened, leading to key concepts and modern pioneers in visual thinking. As a prominent figure in Gestalt psychology, Arnheim profoundly influenced how we understand visual perception and art. He argued that all thinking is essentially perceptual and that we actively shape what we see. His work emphasized how our brains instinctively organize visual information into coherent wholes, think of seeing shapes and patterns rather than just isolated pieces. These Gestalt principles, like proximity, similarity, and continuity, are fundamental to how we design and interpret visual information effectively. Edward Tufte is a statistician and artist. Tufte is a leading voice on information design. His landmark books are all about clarity, precision, and efficiency in data visualization. He coined terms like chart junk, or the unnecessary visual elements that distract from the data, and argued for maximizing the data-ink ratio, ensuring every mark on a visual serves a purpose. Tufte's principles suggest that effective visual communication is about revealing data with integrity and analytical depth, not just making it look pretty. John Norman is a cognitive scientist and usability engineer. Norman introduced concepts like affordances, the perceived properties of an object that suggest how it can be used, and championed user-centered design. His work highlights how intuitive visual design can simplify complex interfaces and improve how we interact with technology. Alan Paivio is a cognitive psychologist. Paivio developed the dual coding theory, a cornerstone of cognitive science. This theory posits that our brains process information through two distinct yet interconnected systems, one for words and one for images. When information is presented in both ways at the same time, say a diagram with labels, it creates two separate mental codes. This dual encoding appears to result in stronger memory, which is probably why a diagram with labels is often more memorable than either the diagram or the labels on their own. Temple Grandin is a renowned animal scientist and advocate for people with autism. Grandin offers a truly unique perspective on visual thinking. She has described her mind as operating primarily in pictures, like a virtual reality system. This allows her to think in pictures, patterns, and abstractions, which has given her extraordinary abilities in problem solving, especially in designing humane livestock facilities. She can mentally simulate complex environments and spot design flaws or inefficiencies that others, relying only on verbal or abstract thought, might miss. Grandin's work makes it clear that visual thinking isn't just a preference. For some, it's their primary mode of understanding the world. This raises a point worth considering. Traditional educational systems may screen out these talents by focusing so heavily on verbal and linear thinking, and we lose something as a society when we don't nurture these unique cognitive styles. Todd Churches, contemporary. In his book Visual Leadership, Churches focuses on leveraging visual thinking for leaders. He points out how visual language, from simple sketches to complex diagrams, can capture attention, aid comprehension, and enable your team members to retain the information you need them to use. For Churches, visual thinking is a critical tool for simplifying complexity and crystallizing strategy and insights. It's about translating abstract concepts into concrete, memorable visuals that resonate with an audience and inspire action. Wilhelmine Brand, contemporary. As the author of Visual Thinking, Brand focuses on the practical application of visual thinking in business. She argues that visual thinking and drawing are becoming increasingly important in today's business settings for boosting agility and collaboration. Brand emphasizes that you don't need to be Van Gogh to use these skills. Rather, it's about developing a mindset and some simple skills to integrate visual communication into daily work. This perspective democratizes visual thinking, making it accessible to anyone who wants to improve their professional effectiveness. These pioneers and their theories underscore that visual thinking is not merely an aesthetic choice. It's a powerful cognitive strategy rooted in how our brains process information. It effectively manages cognitive load, which is the mental effort required to process new information. By presenting information visually, we can reduce the extraneous load that comes from trying to make sense of dense, unorganized text. This allows learners to dedicate more of their mental energy to the actual material, which is likely to lead to a deeper understanding and better retention. Beyond its history and key concepts, one of the most compelling things about visual thinking is the idea that it might be a universal language. While spoken and written languages often divide us, visuals tend to unite us in understanding. This profound capacity for comprehension across divides makes visual communication an essential tool in our interconnected world. The idea that visuals form a universal language comes from the basic way humans see and interpret the world. Before we learn to speak or read, we learn to understand through visual cues. A baby recognizes a smile, understands pointing, and tells objects apart by how they look. This pre-linguistic understanding means that certain visual archetypes and relationships are intuitively grasped across cultures and ages. This innate ability forms the bedrock of visual literacy. Visual metaphors and analogies. Visual thinking often uses metaphors and analogies that can be universally understood, bridging the gap between abstract concepts and concrete reality. A bridge diagram might represent connecting two different ideas or themes, or a tree diagram might illustrate hierarchical relationships. These visual metaphors simplify abstract ideas by relating them to familiar images, which makes new information easier to absorb. They act as powerful mental shortcuts, allowing for quick understanding of complex relationships and helping us get to deeper insights. In conclusion, the history of visual thinking reveals its deep roots in human evolution and its continuous adaptation as an indispensable tool for understanding and communicating our world. From prehistoric cave art to sophisticated data visualizations, and from the scientific insights of Arnheim and Tufte to the practical applications championed by Grandin, Churches, and Brand, visuals have consistently served as a powerful and often universal language. By understanding its pioneers, its core cognitive principles, and its inherent ability to bridge linguistic and cultural divides, we can fully appreciate why visual thinking isn't just a skill for a select few. It's an essential human capacity for navigating and shaping our increasingly complex world. Embracing this visual literacy allows us to communicate with greater clarity, solve problems with deeper insight, foster boundless creativity, and remember information with remarkable retention. Welcome to this lesson where we confront one of the biggest hurdles to embracing visual thinking: the pervasive myth of the "I can't draw" excuse. It can be a little intimidating to try out visual thinking, especially when you think you're just not artistic or feel like you can't even draw a straight line. The truth is, most of us have said something like that at one point or another, and honestly, this lesson is for you. We're going to completely bust that myth and show you that visual thinking isn't about being a great artist at all. It's actually about being clear, communicating effectively, and making connections. It's a really common hang-up, right? As soon as someone mentions visual thinking, we often get these elaborate images of intricate sketches or even famous paintings in our heads. We might instantly feel a little inadequate, remembering those childhood art classes where our stick figures looked, well, like stick figures, while others seem to be effortlessly creating masterpieces. This kind of self-judgment, which often comes from those early experiences, seems to stop so many of us from discovering the true power of visual thinking in our lives. But let's be super clear about this. Visual thinking isn't about artistic talent. It's about clarity. Think of it as using visuals as a tool, a language even, to organize your thoughts, solve problems, and share ideas. It's less about creating a piece for a gallery and more like writing a quick note to yourself or sketching a map to help a friend find your house. The goal isn't to make something beautiful, it's to make something useful. The whole point is to make your thinking visible, understandable, and something you can actually act on. Wilhelmine Brand touches on this very issue in her book, Visual Thinking: Empowering People and Organizations Through Visual Collaboration. She makes a powerful statement that I think really gets to the heart of it. She says, and I'm quoting here, "You don't need Van Gogh's artistic talent or Einstein's intelligence to harness the power of visual thinking and make your company more successful." This idea alone can free us from the pressure of trying to be perfect. Her message really resonates with the core idea behind this course. The value of visual thinking is in its ability to clarify, simplify, and engage, not in the aesthetic quality of what you've drawn. She suggests that with the right mindset and a few simple skills, anyone can start using visual communication at work to foster collaboration, jumpstart new ideas, and encourage innovation. It appears that the key is developing your own signature and style, which implies a personal and functional approach rather than trying to adhere to traditional art standards. Todd Churches reinforces this idea in his work on visual leadership. He also seems to believe that visual thinking is a tool for everyone. He suggests that anyone can draw on the power of pictures to solve problems more effectively, clarify insights, innovate, and lead. His framework highlights that the essence is simply to express ideas through visual imagery and language to influence and inspire action, regardless of your background or what you might think your artistic ability is. The focus, it seems, is on the impact of your message, not on how well you've mastered the medium. Why is clarity the real focus here? Well, because visual thinking is a means to an end. That end is typically a better understanding of something, stronger memory retention, more effective problem solving, or clearer communication. When a drawing helps you achieve those things, it's successful, no matter how good it looks. Just think about a simple map. Let's say you're giving directions to a friend. You'll probably draw a quick sketch on a napkin, a couple of lines for the streets, a square for their destination, and an arrow to show which way to go. Your friend isn't going to critique your perspective or your shading, they just need to know how to get there. The map is successful because it gets them where they need to go, not because it's a work of art. This same idea applies to every form of visual thinking. In a professional setting, the principle holds up. When a team leader quickly sketches a process flow on a whiteboard, they aren't trying to create a gallery piece. They're aiming for a shared understanding so that everyone can see the steps, spot any bottlenecks, and get on the same page. The simpler, clearer, and less ambiguous the drawing is, the more effective it becomes. In fact, visuals that are overly detailed or artistic can sometimes get in the way of clarity by introducing unnecessary distractions. Your brain has to work harder to figure out the intricate details, which can take away from the core message. This focus on clarity aligns with some basic principles of how our brains work. Our brains are actually wired to process patterns, relationships, and distinctions really efficiently. Simple, clear visuals leverage that wiring. When you see a circle connected to a square by an arrow, your brain quickly processes A leads to B or A relates to B. It doesn't get bogged down with whether the circle is perfectly round or the line is perfectly straight. This immediate grasp of meaning is, to my mind, the real magic of visual communication. As we talked about in a previous lesson, studies show that humans can recognize images in as little as 13 milliseconds. This rapid processing is likely facilitated by simplicity, allowing for quick comprehension and reducing the time you have to spend trying to decode a complex artistic drawing. This brings us to a truly liberating truth about visual thinking. You probably already have all the artistic skill you need. The foundation of powerful visual communication lies in just a few basic shapes and symbols. Let's think about the most fundamental building blocks you use all the time. Lines. Straight, curved, dashed. Lines can define boundaries, show direction, arrows, connect ideas, and show relationships. A simple line can stand in for a road, a step in a process, a connection between concepts, or a boundary. Circles. These are great for representing ideas, people, objects, or anything you need to group or highlight. They can convey a sense of unity or act as a focal point. Squares or rectangles. Ideal for representing documents, decisions, processes, or distinct categories. They offer a stable, organized container for information. Triangles. These can indicate hierarchy, stability, instability, or even action, like a play button icon. Their pointed shape naturally draws the eye in a specific direction. Dots. These can be points of interest, discrete data points, or simple markers. When you see them clustered together, they can suggest quantity or density. Beyond these simple shapes, think about the power of symbols that are already universally recognized. Stick figures. These are incredibly versatile for representing people, groups, or roles. A few lines for a body, a circle for a head, and instantly you have a human element. You don't need to be an anatomy expert, you just need to capture the essence of a person. Arrows. This might be the most powerful visual symbol of all. They show direction, flow, sequence, cause and effect, and relationships. An arrow pretty clearly tells you this leads to that, or this influences that. Speech bubbles or thought bubbles easily convey dialogue, ideas, or what someone might be thinking. Question marks, exclamation marks, add emphasis, denote questions, or signal warnings. Light bulbs, the universal symbol for a new idea or a flash of insight. Magnifying glass indicates a search, analysis, or closer inspection. These simple elements are what we can call a visual vocabulary. Just like you learn individual words to form sentences, you learn to combine these basic shapes and symbols to form more complex visual ideas. The power isn't in the complexity of each individual drawing. It's in the clear relationships you establish between them. Let's look at how these elements can be used to create powerful tools. Mind maps, at their heart, mind maps use a central idea, maybe a circle or a keyword, with lines extending out to sub-ideas. These connections are often enhanced with simple icons or colors. No complex drawing is needed, yet they are incredibly effective for brainstorming and organizing thoughts. Flowcharts, these are almost entirely built from rectangles for process steps, diamonds for decisions, and arrows for showing the flow. Even the simplest flowchart can clarify an incredibly complicated process, making it easy to digest and follow. Concept. Maps. These are similar to mind maps, but often a bit more structured, using nodes, circles or rectangles for concepts, and labeled lines, arrows that indicate relationships like causes, leads to, or is a part of. They visually represent knowledge structures and connections. Simple infographics. Many of the best infographics rely on clear icons, bar charts made of rectangles, and line graphs made of lines and points to tell a data story. The visual impact comes from being organized and direct, not from intricate illustrations. Visual metaphors. You don't have to draw a literal ladder to show progress. A series of upward-pointing arrows or a rising line graph can get the same point across. A simple Venn diagram, overlapping circles, clearly illustrates what different concepts have in common. These visual metaphors are powerful because they connect new ideas to mental models you already understand. The "I can't draw" myth often seems to come from a fear of being judged or a desire for everything to be perfect. To truly embrace visual thinking, you have to let go of those kinds of inhibitions. Embrace imperfection. Your drawings are for thinking and communicating, not for putting on display. The quicker and messier they are, the more effectively they serve their purpose by allowing for rapid ideation and iteration. No one expects perfection, and trying to achieve it will only slow you down. Practice on purpose. Just like any skill, visual thinking gets better with practice. Start with some simple exercises. The 6-second sketch. Try to draw an object, a coffee cup, a phone, a tree, in just 6 seconds. This forces you to capture the essence, not the details. The visual alphabet. Practice drawing basic lines, circles, squares, triangles, and dots until they feel natural. Then, try combining them to form simple icons. What if? Take an abstract idea like efficiency or growth or collaboration, and try to represent it using only simple shapes and lines. Focus on the message. Before you even pick up a pen, ask yourself, what am I trying to get across? What action do I want to inspire? What problem am I trying to solve? Let the message be what drives your visual choices, not your artistic ambition. Iterate and evolve. Your first visual might not be perfect, and that's totally fine. Visual thinking is a process. You sketch an idea, you look at it, you refine it, you sketch it again. This continuous feedback loop between what you're thinking and what you're seeing is where real breakthroughs happen. Don't erase your work, just draw a new version. Every time you do, your thinking will become clearer. Essentially, visual thinking taps into our brain's natural ability to process visual information. It's about leveraging the picture superiority effect, the idea that images are remembered better than words, and the dual coding theory that information encoded both visually and verbally creates stronger memory traces. These cognitive advantages are unlocked by any visual representation, no matter how simple. Your brain doesn't care if the lines are a little wobbly. It cares if they effectively convey meaning. So, it's time to banish the "I can't draw" myth for good. I encourage you to see that your hand, guided by your intention, can create powerful visual aids using the simplest of tools. The real magic of visual thinking isn't in your artistic ability. It's in your newfound power to clarify complex ideas, solve tough problems, and communicate with incredible impact, all by embracing the elegant simplicity of basic shapes and symbols. Now go pick up that pen, embrace the stick figure, and start making your thinking visible. You might be surprised by how much clarity and power you can unleash. Every time you do, your thinking will become clearer. Essentially, visual thinking taps into our brain's natural ability to process visual information. It's about leveraging the picture superiority effect, the idea that images are remembered better than words, and the dual coding theory that information encoded both visually and verbally creates stronger memory traces. These cognitive advantages are unlocked by any visual representation, no matter how simple. Your brain doesn't care if the lines are a little wobbly. It cares if they effectively convey meaning. So, it's time to banish the "I can't draw" myth for good. I encourage you to see that your hand, guided by your intention, can create powerful visual aids using the simplest of tools. The real magic of visual thinking isn't in your artistic ability. It's in your newfound power to clarify complex ideas, solve tough problems, and communicate with incredible impact, all by embracing the elegant simplicity of basic shapes and symbols. Now go pick up that pen, embrace the stick figure, and start making your thinking visible. You might be surprised by how much clarity and power you can unleash.